Hi guys, welcome to Licks, Lessons, and Life number 9. Or not number 9, number 10. Sorry, number 10. So today I'm going to talk about music theory, and I decided just to call it Music Theory 101, and talk about intervals and the major scale. So let's get started here. Why learn music theory? And that is because it is the language you speak to help communicate musical ideas and understand musical concepts. Essentially, when you learn theory, you learn music. So when you have an understanding of music, then you can play whatever instrument you want because you understand the fundamentals of harmony and how music works. So if you just don't learn theory, then you only understand how to play the guitar and play licks. But if you understand the concepts behind what you are playing on the guitar, you can easily transpose that onto different instruments, and because you have an understanding of music and you don't just understand the licks. Because if you just play licks and stuff and you don't understand the musical concepts behind it, then essentially they won't ever go farther than just the licks. You won't ever have a good understanding of why the licks sound the way they do, how to transpose the licks into different keys, and etc. So hopefully that makes some sense there as to why I think that is important to learn musical concepts. Some people don't, or not musical concepts, but learn theory. Some people don't like to learn theory because they're afraid that it kind of keeps you from developing your own creativity. Yeah, that's kind of true, but it can't hurt you. That's my point that I'm making, is it can't hurt you to understand music theory. And then now I want to talk about intervals, or interval, and that's the distance between two pitches or notes. Each distance in music develops a certain tonality to it. So if you move from the note E to the note G, that's a minor third, and that is a certain distance, and that certain distance, your ear hears a certain tonality when you move that distance. And some common examples of intervals are the whole step, which is also the same as a tone, which is also the same as a major second, which is also the same as 2 frets on the guitar. And another example of an interval is a half step, which is the same as a semitone, which is the same as a minor second, which is the same as 1 fret on the guitar. So if you go to the low E string and you play the first fret, which is an F, and then you play 2 frets higher, and you go to the 3rd fret, you play a G, you have just moved a major second relative from F to G. So the 1st fret to the 3rd fret is a major second. Just like if you were to move from the 1st fret on the low E string and play the low F note there and move to the 2nd fret, that would be a minor second, which is 1 fret. And that has a certain tonality to it based upon the distance you moved from the original note, which was F, which is the 1st fret. So if you move 1 fret from the note F, which is on the 1st fret of the low E string, so if you move 1 fret up, minor second. Move 2 frets up, major second. And a fun fact is the half step or the minor second is the smallest musical interval in Western music, with the exception of microtonal music. This is my understanding. I may be wrong, but for the most part, when you hear majority of every song on the radio, most popular songs, all the classic rock songs, the smallest interval you will ever hear is a minor second. Microtonal music is kind of like a subgenre of music, and it's grown in popularity, but pretty much essentially you'll play smaller intervals, hence the name microtonal music. You'll play smaller intervals than a minor second, but I wouldn't worry about that too much unless you decide to go that direction. So pretty much every song that you hear on the radio, the smallest interval or distance between 2 notes that you will hear will be the minor second. Why are they important to know? They're important to know because they help develop relative pitch. So a majority of musicians out there have relative pitch, and relative pitch is the ability to hear intervals, so the distance between 2 notes, as opposed to perfect pitch, which a smaller proportion of people in music have, and perfect pitch is pretty much they hear pitch and they know exactly what note it is. Relative pitch is you hear the distance traveled and you know what interval it is. They're both really strong, and they're both good to have, and neither one is really essentially better than the other. From my understanding of my musical studies, you pretty much can do develop the same musical strength that you could if you had either one. But essentially, people, I would say, who have perfect pitch have a kind of are further along in their journey because essentially their ears are just highly developed right away. But you can essentially develop relative pitch, which is pretty much just as equally as good as perfect pitch. So don't get too hung up about that. Sorry about kind of the noise outside. I got a tractor, it looks like, in the middle of my street. I don't know what they're doing. Whatever. Anyways, so the next point I want to talk about is the major scale, which is essentially a series of 7 notes that make up a key or the key signature of a song. And the formula or the intervals that you would play to develop or to create the major scale will be a whole step, then you'd move another whole step, then you'd move a half step, then you move a whole step, then you move another whole step, then you move another whole step, then you move a half step, and that would create the major scale. Or you could have the notes of a C major scale here. And so if you move from C to D, which is a whole step, D to E, which is a whole step, E to F, which is a half step, F to G, which is a whole step, G to A, which is a whole step, A to B is a whole step, and B to C is a half step. And you would have the major scale. And the major scale intervals would be the root, the major second, the major third, the perfect fourth, the perfect fifth, the major sixth, the major seventh, then back to the octave. And you'll see it commonly numbered like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So these intervals are relative to the distance traveled from the note C. That's the key. So C to D is a major second. C to E is a major third. C to F is a perfect fourth. C to G is a perfect fifth. C to A is a sixth. C to B is a major seventh. C to C is an octave. That's the key. And that's where these intervals are derived from. They're derived from how far away you are moving away from the root of whatever major scale you are playing. And another crazy thing is all intervals can be found within the major scale. So all the intervals like that are minor intervals and augmented intervals can also be found in the major scale, depending on if you move from F to A or from G to B. And if you bounce around within these notes, you can actually get all the intervals. But when the major scale is talking about the intervals of the major scale, they're all distances derived and traveled from the note C. Like I said, C to D is a major second, C to E is a major third, etc. So all Western music can be traced back to the major scale. It is essentially, we're all diatonic. It is essentially, let me fix that real quick. Essentially, where all diatonic harmony is derived from. It is the home base, so to speak, for the basis for musical intervallic communication. So pretty much all scales are derived from the major scale. And essentially all theory is derived from the major scale. It's like the scale where everything comes from. It's where the foundations of harmony, so it's important. That's why I feel like it's important to understand the major scale, because it's composed of the intervals, which is why I talked about intervals, and second I talked about the major scale, because the major scale is where all diatonic harmony essentially for all Western music is derived from, and why I feel it is important to know, because everything comes from the major scale. It's like the home base of all scales, and where everything is derived from, and where all music theory comes from, essentially. So this is my understanding of some basic music theory that I wanted to teach you guys, and hopefully this helps begin to develop your understanding of music. And I will see you guys in the next video, and thanks for tuning in, and I appreciate it a lot, and you guys have an awesome day. See ya.